First and foremost, thank you very much for coming. My name is Jean Renzi. I'm the CEO of the Downtown Development Authority, and I want to welcome you and thank you for participating in this forum session. This is the second, actually the third. We had 2 question sessions on October 15th, and these are the wrap-up to the questions, some of the questions that you had. I also want to thank the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, the Grand Traverse Band, and the Michigan Department of Natural Resources who are represented here tonight and helped to get answers to all of the questions that we gathered. The volume of questions that we had was well over 200, and the session that we've identified was about 1.5 hours. So instead of answering each question individually, we put them in broad categories, and we'll be answering them in those larger themes as well. The answers are, we have answers to each of the questions. We're just not going to identify we're not going to answer every single question, but they will be on the website as well at Great Lakes Fisheries website and the DDA website. There's 21 questions that we'll ask for clarification today, and those clarifications will be talking through those clarifications with this group, and then those answers will be available by November 30th and will be on the website as well. This forum started through many years ago, but the reason that we started on October 15th was when the DDA through the Lower Boardman leadership team, when we did a public outreach to start the unified plan, there were additional questions about the FishPass project. So the leadership team partnered and said, you know, we should go out and try to get what those questions are and try to get some answers for them. The partners with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission was very open and said, absolutely, let's get together, get the questions out there and the answers out there, to be open, transparent, and try to work with the community for this project. The project partners have worked many hours since the 15th to try to answer as many questions as we can. I want to introduce some of the project partners who will be answering, who provided a summary of the questions raised. We fit into, as identified, there's several categories, there's 7 categories that we have. And again, a full response to each and every question will be found online after this meeting, and hard copies will be available. Probably tonight we have about 15 copies. There's 35 pages, so we didn't make a whole lot of copies, but they will be online and then available at the DDA office and available at the city clerk's office as well tomorrow. If you don't want to look at them online, we have hard copies as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Frank Deturi. He is the director of the Department of Public Works for the City of Traverse City, who will go a little bit into the dam project and the history of what went into the FishPass and the Lower Boardman.
Thanks, Jean. Hopefully you'll be able to pick me up on that microphone there. That work? I do have to hold it in front of me. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Jean. I was asked to give a little bit of a historical perspective for the project and how we got to where we are. The FishPass project was never a standalone project. It's always been part of the nearly 15-year effort by the Boardman River Dam Settlement Implementation Team and all the partners to implement the decision of the Boardman River Dams Committee and the actual settlement agreements, which was to modify the lowermost barrier, which we're talking about, and to remove the upper 3 dams. There were a lot of participation, not only from the respective agencies, but from the community. And I just want to read a list of some of the folks that were involved in that process. The Conservation Resource Alliance, the Watershed Center, the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy, Rotary Charities, Ocean Foundation, and the Community Foundation, the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Michigan Department of Natural Resources, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, now called EGLE, Environment and Great Lakes, the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Grand Traverse Conservation District, Inland Seas, Trout Unlimited, and the Michigan Hydro Relicensing Coalition, Grand Traverse County, Central United Methodist Church, Rivers Edge Condominium Residents, the City of Traverse City Downtown Development Authority, and most importantly, the people of the community. The existing dam in question is beyond its design lifespan and needs to be addressed. If the city were to undertake replacement alone, estimates would be over $10 million. Through the partnership represented in this room, we have much more than a dam to replace. With minimal costs to the city and its residents and taxpayers, the majority of the funds for FishPass come from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and they will be used to create a new dam for the citizens of the city and an increased size park with more useful applications. As a result, the city will receive a new dam, improved and increased park space, and a fish sorting research facility at minimal cost. Pardon, I have notes here. There's just a lot to take to remember, so appreciate your patience. As was mentioned, the Union Street Dam modification and the intent of the FishPass project has been 15 years in the making and was always part of the initial dam restoration project. Therefore, it was expected that we'd have questions. We understood that there would be, It was expected that we'd have questions raised about the decision-making process that led up to the decision to modify Union Street Dam and integrate the FishPass project into the project scope. Having been involved in the Bourbon River Dam Removal Project for nearly 10 years, I can speak to those questions, including the fact that this modification, a modification at Union Street Dam, has always been included in that plan. The question of how best to replace or fix the failing structure was a critical component of the project. Also, maintaining a fully functioning fish lamprey barrier was essential. However, just as critical was to develop some type of connectivity between the upper and lower Bourbon River. Really, that's what this project's always been about, connectivity, and all the benefits that come with connectivity between a lake that's fed by its tributary. The city led as the owner of this asset. This led the city as the owner of this asset to begin work with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission and project partners and to identify potential solutions that maintained a barrier that would allow for selective fish passage. This fish passage project will be the capstone of the entire Bourbon River Restoration Project and will meet the objectives of that original, goals and objectives of that original project plan. Thanks to so many of you that submitted to where we are today, the ability to hopefully provide some additional information so you're well informed of the project. And next, I'd like to turn it over to Dan Zielinski as he will give an overview of current efforts related to the FishPass project.
Thanks, Frank. Yeah, so I'm up here to kind of talk about a little bit of a summary of the questions that were received in relation to design, permitting the construction process, as well as questions that were raised about funding of the project, and also how the project has worked with fisheries groups to address concerns about fish species moving upstream. To date, the owners of this project the City of Traverse City, in conjunction with project partners that includes the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, the Grand Traverse Band of Chippewa and Ottawa Indians, and the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, have attended, hosted, and presented on FishPass over a total of 149 meetings, or 140 or so meetings that date back to 2014. In fact, one of the handouts in back lists each and every one of those events. This has also resulted in a significant amount of opportunity for public engagement and participation. In fact, so in that process, we also incorporated that feedback and those comments into the design and assessment studies associated with the project as best we could. We anticipate that the project will go out for bid during January and February of next year, with contractors selected by March or April. We then anticipate construction to start mid-2020, and this work is expected to last 2 construction seasons, with the project being completed in the spring of 2022. The project team has been working with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy to complete the required joint permit application and necessary environmental reviews. That includes public input. We've also been working with all relevant state agencies on this project, including the Michigan DNR, State Historic Preservation Office, US EPA, and the US Fish and Wildlife Service. And in fact, we have a statement from the DNR on their position for fish passage during the optimization phase of FishPass, and that also is available on the back table. With the repair of the Union Street Dam in place and the construction of this scientific research facility, the goals of the Borden River removal project will have been reached. Before I move on, I will briefly kind of talk about the organization of the response document when you're able to see it at the end of this meeting. And briefly, Jean mentioned a little bit about the categories. So we broke down each of those 207 questions down into a distinct category that included construction, design and permitting, fish community objectives, funding, miscellaneous, public engagement and decisions, and research. So in that document, you'll see all of the questions listed numerically based on the order that they were received. And they'll be listed under each of those categories with the numbered response listed associated with that question. So you'll see on the table, question 207. That question will be restated, as well as its requisite response. And with that, I will now turn it over to Marty Colburn for his perspective on the city's long-term ownership, operation, and maintenance plans.
Good evening, and thank you, Dan. As the city being the owner of the facility, I want to back up a little bit, keeping in mind that originally there were 4 dams. And so it started out knowing that Union Street Dam was going to be the 4th to be addressed, but that it needed to be addressed because it is the barrier to the Great Lake in regard to keeping the sea lamprey out of the river and to make sure that invasive species have a barrier to not just come up on its own. So the city has been involved with this for many years through the IT, the implementation team that they've referenced with all the different federal, state, and local agencies for many years. But this is really, for the city's part, the capstone of the project. Now, there were 4 dams. 2 of them were owned by the city and 2 by the county. Originally, the 3 upstream were used predominantly for hydropower, basically through regulatory issues and the fact that the demands have changed. It was no longer really viable or feasible to use those dams for energy anymore. So it had changed, and the plan had been to open up and make it more of a natural setting in regard to allowing the water to flow back down to the Great Lakes. So Union Street Dam is the last of the 4 dams to be addressed. It's kind of the capstone of the project, and certainly important to the city because it's right down into the middle of the city, and it is the barrier as well. So we're focusing now in regard to that, putting together the funds, working with different agencies, and the fact of the matter is what the city gets out of it is a dam, which is very significant in terms of the cost. The dam that we have now, and I know most of you, if not all of you, have been down to see it in recent years, and it's more than wanting. It is slowly failing, and the fact of the matter is it's the responsibility of the city at this point to find a means of replacing that, and we believe we've done so through this process. So it's a real positive in terms of the investment that will come to replace this dam with actually a more efficient dam as well. And so it will be owned by the city. We're going into a different series of agreements with the parties that were referenced earlier, with the Great Lakes Fish Commission, with the state, with the band, the city itself, to be able to proceed forward. We also have easements with church and some of the property owners adjacent to the area. There's also 3 parks that are immediately adjacent to the area that we're looking at in terms of the enhancement into the area to make it more of a people place, to make it a little more attractive and a little more usable. And that was part of our discussion from day one when we started working with these agencies, is it has to be able to be utilized by human beings, by people. This is a city, if you think you're going to build it and not have people come down to the water, that would be a mistake. And so that has been the plan, is to make it usable for people, not just for restraining the lamprey from coming up or a scientific laboratory. So those easements we're working through the attorneys to work through and putting in place. So the city will maintain ownership of the dam. Once it's completed and turned back over, once it's, again, engineered, it's gone through the engineering process, and once it's built, it will be owned by the city, but operated and maintained by joint agreements between the parties, such as the Ottawa and Chippewa Band, the Great Lakes Fish Commission, MDNR. Now, the city has no say on what comes up and down, never have, and still doesn't have the say as to what type of fish go up and down it. And so I want to make that real clear, is we work with the partners like with MDNR, and certainly we work with them in terms of maintenance, but actually we don't control that. That is through the state. They will go through a process, a public process, to allow others to have say, but ultimately the state will make those determinations. In regard to what we see in terms of what will come out of this, is a much more viable dam, something that will serve the city hopefully for 50 years or more, to be built to have actually less maintenance and operations in terms of the day-to-day because of the way it's designed. In regard to the process, we've had, like you mentioned, about 150 different types of meetings with different groups. We approached the City Commission with this particular plan back in 2016. We're authorized to move forward to work on it, and there's been numerous different opportunities to present to the public, but particularly through the City Commission at numerous meetings, to the County Commission, the DDA, the Parks and Rec Commission, Brown Bridge Advisory, Planning Commission. The Planning Commission actually has to provide an approval to make sure that it fits their definitions in regard to working within the master plan. We want to encourage you to participate in this process. I know that you already have by forwarding I think it was 2012 questions, in which we'll be answering many of those in this, and trying to refine a few of the questions, as there was a bit of a challenge to understand what a few of them were attempting to ask, so they'll work through that. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Gabe. All right.
Thank you, Marty. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gabe Schneider, and I am the Vice Chair of the Downtown Development Authority Board. I wasn't planning on being the moderator for this session here this evening. Our moderator is on his way, was delayed in his travels. So I will fill in for the first bit, and when he gets over, he will take over the reins. But first of all, thank you all for providing these comments. I think it's critical to have gathered this public input through the Lower Boardman Ad Hoc Committee. And tonight, what we're going to be trying to do is to parse out make sure that we're hearing you correctly. When we gathered these over 200 questions, we realized that there were some that weren't clear and that we needed some more information from you, the public, to better understand what the meaning was behind them. And so we would like to walk through and work through a really interactive process whereby we list up the questions as they were written, as we receive them, and work with you to better clarify what the meaning of those questions are. And so I think and I hope that this is a really engaging process where we can utilize the screen behind me and some real-time typing and editing and move through this list to make sure that we truly have heard the questions that have come from all of you. So let's just remember that, in this process, we want to make sure that we're very tough on the questions, but not on each other. It goes without saying, and also want to make sure that we're clear and concise and brief, because we do have a fair amount of information to get through tonight. So with that, Andrew is going to be helping me with this process.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. I'll just provide a couple of remarks on behalf of our facilitator who is texting these to me en route here. So what we're going to do tonight is we've got the original question in the first column outlined as it was recorded during the October 15th session. Our moderator has taken a crack at a possible clarification here. What he wants to do is kind of go through this, try and identify the person who asked that question. If they're in the audience, have them help clarify it. Otherwise, work through with you interpretations of this question, and he can bring up here the possible clarification that he's drafted. What he wanted me to tell you is that what he's got in this box here really is just a stab at that. It can be completely deleted, rewritten, but it's something for you to work with to help clarify those statements. And so Reed is going to be recording and editing live as we go through this. So Gabe's going to kind of work you through this first one, and then hopefully Dale will arrive soon to kind of help with the process. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Knowing that this is hard to read up in the back, Dale? Yeah, look at that. Just in time.
For Delta and the fact that I haven't yet learned why.
Well, we just got things started, so I'll hand the mic over to you.
Okay, great.
It doesn't work, so you have to actually.
Testing. It doesn't work.
Well, it's for the.
Okay. Oh, it's for the TV? All right. So you want me to hold it like this so that you can actually hear me? Good. Got a good sound check. All right. My name is Dale Burkett. I'm with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. I'm the Sea Lamprey Program Director for the Commission, but I also have trained about 400 odd facilitators for U.S. federal agencies, the states of Pennsylvania, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana. Also with the American Fisheries Society. So I do lots of meeting facilitation. Andrew asked me to help out tonight to help you clarify the questions that there was some confusion about among the team that's been working so hard to answer all of the written questions that came forth from the previous meeting. And so that's what we're about tonight. So what I did is I took a look at the questions that there was confusion on. All by myself, I tried to clarify them and come up with some potential wording to see if we can move things along. There's no investment in that. If the potential wording isn't correct or needs to be fine-tuned, that's what you're here to help do, because the team really needs to have these 21 remaining questions sharply identified so they can do a good job of answering them for you. So are we all on the same page at the same place? Good. So a few ground rules: be tough on issues, not on other folks. Just address your attention on trying to help clarify these questions so that we get it right. And really, that's about all we need. To hold up your hand or whatever you do at an auction for me to recognize you to speak, okay? And if I don't do a good job of that, wave your hand. And I literally did just get off the plane, and I literally did just walk in the room. All right, so the first original question was, does FishPass have money allocated to temporary exit points for kayakers on the Boardman River next to Union Street Dam? So could you reveal, whoever's running the keyboard here, can you reveal the possible clarification? Remember, this is just me thinking ahead to try to help, so it doesn't have any weight other than that. Does the FishPass project include funding or a plan to provide temporary kayak exit points on the Boardman River near the Union Street Dam during construction? Did that get it? Okay. All right, and if anybody has a blinding flash of revelation after we move past one, we'll still leave them up here so we can come back. So this is how we're going to do this, and hopefully we'll get through all the 21 questions in the time that we've got. We'll make our effort to do that. Can you reveal the next original question, please? And we just did this so that you wouldn't be looking ahead, because people tend to read ahead and then they're not paying attention to what's going on. How can EGLE justify having a meeting which will affect their opinion in permitting the demolition of Union Street Dam and construction of FishPass when public had no specific information on which to make a judgment and make comment? Was their comment meeting premature to the available facts? Okay, there's a lot packed in there, so let's see what the brain in a jar did with it in advance. Has EGLE failed to perform its responsibilities pertaining to the joint permit applications? Everything that's packed into the left side can be succinctly stated, at least in my mind, on the right. Any improvements to that?
Yeah, the screening method.
Screening method?
This may have been a question I asked on October 15. I wanted to know what was the screening method, and I just have never seen that. If that's included in here.
So what was the screening method? Okay, so we'll add that. Are you good? You? Pardon me, I don't know all of your names.
More specifically, the public input, because EQ had a hearing in February, about a year ago, that 3 people attended on the permit. So they got virtually no public input and very few comments.
Okay, so
The public input part is important.
So as a question then, what did EGLE do to fulfill its requirement to get public input?
But more specifically, they met their requirements, but did it really get much public input?
It only had 1 day notice, or was noticed in the Record Eagle that day, and only 3 people showed up, and it was February.
So what was the screen?
They have an obligation to do a permit hearing, and I don't think they met it.
Okay, well, those are assertions. So that's why originally I said, have they failed to perform their responsibilities? Because that assertion would be an assertion that somehow they didn't perform their responsibility.
With respect to public input on the permit.
Okay, so how would you ask us to address that? What's a good question? Worded as a question, not an assertion.
What was the public input for the permit application?
Okay, so
You were saying to perform its responsibilities, so did they meet their responsibilities?
okay, so if I might.
Put notice and comment or not?
Let me help you a little bit. Okay, so I think that what you're really trying to get at is, yes, if they provided an opportunity, they might have met their responsibilities, but did that really offer enough opportunity to hear from the public? So was there sufficient, well, no, what was the level of public comment and participation that was achieved during the public notification process? We'll see how good he is with typing fast. Those words just kind of came out. Is that fair? Did that help?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay, good.
In the back?
Yes. Sorry.
I was at that meeting, and I walked out because I was one of 3 people who weren't regular government employees, and I had the feeling that nobody had any legitimate information that we now have, but we did not have then, to make any kind of decision or offer questions to, because the only information the public had at that point was comments from what I'll call the dog and pony show that we've gone on the previous year. Any competing facts to that were not available last February.
Okay.
Couldn't possibly ask an intelligent question because they have no information.
Okay, so sorry for the way that you felt during that meeting, and sorry for the fact that you actually walked out of it. We've captured a couple of questions here that the team is going to be addressing, and I think that might get to part of your concern. I hope. Andrew?
Yes, Mr. Facilitator, could you ask the gentleman, please, to clarify what he means by screening method, just so that we can appropriately address that part of the question?
What I'm referring to.
You're dealing with scientists and engineers, so.
That's exactly what I mean to be dealing with, and I appreciate your asking. In the May 2019 Great Lakes Fishery Commission article, it indicated that methods that needed to be researched included bubbles, lights, various methodologies. We have not since that announcement of what was intended to be researched, we haven't gotten any identification of the screening method for lampreys or fish, so that we can't comment or even understand what the science is of the screening.
Now I'm zeroing right in on what you've got to say, and there are two other related questions later on in this list of 21, and let's get to them, and then if we haven't gotten close to what you need, we'll come back, okay?
Thank you.
Yep, good. Okay, so good, we've had some input on this one, sharpened up, added actually a couple of other questions. I think we're good to move on, are we? Otherwise, we may be here till tomorrow. All right, let's unveil the next original question. What is everyone using, where is everyone using the space and amphitheater, et cetera, going to park? Good, okay, and let's reveal my early thoughts and see how you can improve them. Has public parking demand related to the project, including the amphitheater, been adequately considered in project design? Did that help?
Well, it doesn't answer where they're going to park.
No, this isn't an answer. This is a question. They've got to think about this, right?
Well, I don't think this question requires people to answer where they're going to park. It just says, have they considered it, yes or no?
Well, yeah, I don't believe in their original designs they've had much discussion about parking. So this is a good question for the design team to think about. Right. Comments from you, Andrew, on that one?
Yes, parking has been considered to some degree.
Does this put a sharper point on that, though? Okay, Dan Zielinski, does this put a sharper point on this for you guys?
Yeah, as the question, yes, it does.
Good. See, one of the things is when they looked at these questions, they became confused.
Well, the answer could be yes, it's been considered, there won't be any.
Well,
Could you be more specific, say how much public parking?
is required? How much public parking,
Sorry.
how much new public parking will be required?
And will it be provided? Provided, not provided. Provided.
How about required everybody?
Well, will be provided. Okay. Part of the design effort, yes. Good? Can we move on? How are we doing with the brain in the jar stuff in advance? I tried pretty hard on this, but, you know, it's not perfect. All right. This is a big one. If we have an additional rise in water levels throughout downtown, I assume there will be significant property damage. Do the dam removal and fish ladder project include a contingency fund to cover those expenses? Won't we, the taxpayers in this city, be responsible for those costs? Is a better fishing experience for the minority who pursue that activity more important than ensuring the protection of downtown properties? Lots of loaded statements there. Let's see what I tried to do with that. And then let's see what you do to what I did. Project design and permitting processes. During project design and permitting processes, will potential for flooding be evaluated and mitigated in final project design, construction, and operation? And then it occurred to me, there's nothing that the project can do about rising Lake Michigan water levels and any backup, so. But that was just an aside. That was just me thinking during the time. Okay, hands, anybody? Is this helpful? Does it sharpen it?
What about the issue of the funding? I don't see that.
Where's the contingency funding addressed?
Let's see, how would we put that in there?
Liability.
And, okay, so after and operation, you could put comma, and where will, and how will funding be guaranteed for, and then there's a list, right?
Isn't this more of an insurance question? Like if
It is.
something goes bad.
It's a liability question. It's all kinds of questions. There are many questions. That's why I said on the right-hand side, first there's an assertion, okay? After all, there's all kinds of processes that have to go on when you're talking about a dam removal or a repair, and Eagle has a responsibility to go through, and they do the flood modeling, and they take a look at, what do they call it? It's something harm. Zelensky, help me out.
No incremental.
No incremental harm. So no project can be permitted that shows that harm to begin with. And so that's built into even the design phase of the project. So there's a lot in the background, and these guys are going to help with the answers when they provide them here, so that will be, you'll have it all in writing. But we're going through the same thing right now down in Grand Rapids with the design of that barrier system down there. And EGLE is the final permitting authority when it comes to anything that has to do anything with flooding.
You still haven't addressed the contingency question. If the dam removal project results in failure, as one has already half done in the past, there was a dam removal project that resulted in a flood of water that was not anticipated.
Catastrophic failure while it was being removed?
So if that happens in downtown, what contingency funds exist to cover those expenses, if any?
Okay, so how are we doing on, let's make sure we get that sharply captured here. If the dam removal construction results in failure, who has liability and how will reparations be funded? Is that fair? I came up with that word reparations somewhere from my brother, who's actually an attorney. Yes.
I just have a question not about this, but I was just wondering, once we clarify these questions, are we going to get to the answers part?
Oh, well, actually what's going to happen is they're going to go back and do the same thing that they did with all of the other questions. I get
A after the P. A.
Oh yeah, we can go back if you want to.
You know, I wanted to hear the answers for the other like 180 questions.
They've got that in writing, and it's also available on a website. And did you guys cover that earlier in the meeting? I mean, having just walked in, I don't know what they told you. So specifically, they do know they're going to have those made available to them?
Yes, at the end of the meeting, there will be, like Gene said, there will be a select number of handouts that were printed because of the large page number. We are providing a handout that has the web address where you can find.
And so if there are folks in here that don't have computers or whatever, they can let you know and sign up tonight, and they'll get a hard copy also?
There will be instructions for that at the end of the meeting, yes.
A way to do that. Is that good?
Yes, I meant like if I don't want to be a part of the re-clarification of the questions, is there an answers portion today, or is it just all available?
This is all about the 21 that they needed more clarification on. They've already generated the answers, which will be available today for the ones that they understood. These are ones that they had a hard time understanding, and that's why they're working with you tonight to do that.
I wish they would have made that clear up front.
Hold. I can't listen to everybody at once. So there was the assertion that this wasn't made clear. I believe that everyone would be told what tonight was about.
Yeah, all the answers were tonight.
Yeah.
Well, most of the answers are available tonight. This is clarification of, if we don't get this done, these 21 questions will have no answer because the team doesn't know what they're being asked.
Can you understand, though, the
frustration? Yep.
The anticipated fear that you come to a meeting like this and you expect some answers on the questions, and when you arrive here, you get something that is interesting and okay, but you don't get what you came for.
Well, your facilitator believed that you would have all been told that in advance, so I'm having fun with that right now too. But what I'd like to do, though, is while we've got you here, I do want to get these clarified so that they can answer these in addition to all those others. And then there are a whole battery of legal questions that they reserve that are going to have to be dealt with by a battery of attorneys.
Last question, and then when is the meeting when we can discuss?
I think that's going to be the wrap up tonight, is talking about that next meeting. Is that not correct, Andrew and company? Yes?
That's right back there. We will have another meeting when we can have a public meeting about the answers that are provided.
The lower ordinance team, DDA, Fishery Commission, the project team are planning in January an open house with informational sessions where we can interact with everybody.
Is that before or after the bid? Is that before?
Pardon me. One person speaks. You've got the floor, sir.
Thank you.
all of you, please be quiet and be respectful of his time.
I think I just heard was that the public meeting to allow the public participation in reacting to the answers we're going to get on the website after tonight, that public meeting is going to be in January at the same time as the bids are put out. And so we will have gotten to the bid point or not without any public chance to discuss the answers. Is that right?
That was it.
Responses can be emailed at any time, or we can have discussions around clarification of any of the answers that are provided. We've got 200 or so questions that were addressed. And so we've got a 35-page document that responds to those. We're hoping to clarify these remaining questions so we can provide the fulsome answers to the group by the end of November, and then we can engage in any follow-up questions or dialogue around those responses.
Before the bids are let, correct?
I don't know the exact timing of that, but we will endeavor to have that.
So,
Pardon me,
Chance for a hearing.
pardon me, I'll recognize you, sir, and then you, and then I can come back to you if you have another comment. Yep.
Let me try to help you out. There was nothing said about how this was going to be done, so I think we all presumed that that was a question up there that was one of the 207, and what we were going to see on the right was the answer. It wasn't stated that you were looking for clarification on 20 or 30 questions, so we're all confused about what we came here to hear. We thought we came here to hear answers, not help resolve.
Okay, so I need to ask a question of our organizers. It was my understanding that that would be addressed in the opening comments.
so Dale?
Yes.
So if it wasn't clarified, our apologies. So we have the 200 questions. We have 21 that needs to be clarified, and those 21 will be available on November 30th. The other questions are available and will be online, and we have 15 copies of those answers on the back table when you leave. I only have the 15 copies. What I'm hearing is that when we respond to the 25 clarifying questions, then when are we going to be coming back to ask additional questions, kind of follow-up components
In a public hearing.
in a public hearing?
When the public can stand and speak.
Well, this is just a public forum component. So we're trying to get to the questions and the answers, but not, it's not a public meeting or a public forum. So I'm not sure how to clarify, or I thought that what we are is going to answer the questions that were asked, which we have done with 77% of all of the questions. We just have 21 questions that we need clarification on.
We all expected that we would come here to hear the answers and have a chance to discuss the answers.
Okay, and so
What you're searching for is if you're not going to do that tonight, or you're going to not have another session until January, that's too late. You're going to be out for bid, you're going to have selected a contractor, and nobody's had a chance to respond to the question, the answers to the question.
Thank you all, but in order for this team to actually serve you well, if we don't get these 21 clarified, you won't have answers to them, and some of them I think you really care about. So I'd like to get to that point, but first I'll call on you. Yes?
I'm a reporter. Just to clarify, most of the questions are available, like the answers are available online right now.
Almost all of them, 77% are available right now.
So I can pull up my computer and look.
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Exactly. Okay, now I'll take the guy in the blue hat. Sir, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
I would like to add question number 22. And that is, given the timing of this and what people are saying, is it possible to delay the construction, the beginning of the construction of this project for a year?
Yeah.
That question can be added. The answer may be simple. All right, yes, you back here. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Hi, Judy.
Feel is that really you're going to go ahead with it the way you want to do, because you are doing this, getting us all here to somehow say that you had a public meeting, but it's not going to make any difference, and that's not right.
Well, I do understand what you're saying, and I hear it. I actually facilitated a couple of large public meetings associated with this project. Don't quite know how they missed you folks, and that's a consideration. And I'm not the one to tell you how that's going to happen, because I'm your facilitator. I'm not even part of the project team. I've been asked to come in and help with this tonight, but they're hearing you.
I don't think they are hearing us. I think that's all been planned, and we're going to be a bit of an obstacle, but it feels like it's going to go through just the way the developers or whoever wanted it. That's what it feels like.
But Charlie's question is the right one.
Yep, and at the end, we'll put that in the box number 22. And Charlie, when we get there, will you help us make sure we get that right? It's pretty simple, but this could drag on for a while, and I may forget. So you're my guard dog, okay? Yes. Charlie? All right. Yes.
Just for the sake of time, since you're under an hour now, I think all the questions, important questions, are going to entail two key concepts. The first concept is we've been told repeatedly for at least 2 years, if not 3 years, that the dam was in a state of disrepair and it needed to be replaced. We would like to question that. The other question is about fish passage. And even though it's fallen on the DNR to make the ultimate decision, I have read over and over again that it's been their intention going back to 1980.
Okay, so what I'm going to need to do what I need to do at this point is to tell you that both of those things will come up if you'll let us get through these 21. They are in this list. But we need to get there or we're not going to get it right.
I wouldn't want to be in your position right now, but my suggestion would be, since we now know what you're trying to do, is try to get through these questions as best you can, since we know we're not going to get an answer tonight.
Yep.
And then to Gene and Marty and everybody else, you need to have an opportunity for people to question the questions or question the answers. I don't know when you're going to do it. Geez, don't do it until January.
Okay, that suggestion's a good one, because for the project planning team to do their job well and to answer your questions to the best of their ability, they have to understand them. And, you know, biologists and engineers sometimes have a hard time talking to each other, okay? Okay, good. Well, but we're talking to each other just fine. But sometimes that happens, okay? And so they need a little sharp clarification on these questions, or they can't serve you. And that's really what the whole issue is tonight. Yes?
I'm surprised that you're saying that these answers to these 20 questions won't be available until November 30th.
I have no clue. I have no clue why they said it'll take that long.
Those answers are available in 1 week, and then we have another meeting in 1 week after that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Many people, in order to accommodate this meeting tonight, changed their entire schedules, including me, okay? So I don't know how long it'll take them to do this. I'll let Andrew address that.
2 weeks.
Yeah, if I could maybe just say a little bit about the process.
Could you tell us your last name?
Andrew Muir, M-U-I-R, Great Lakes Fishery Commission. Okay. Yeah, just a little bit about the process here. The FishPass team was kind of caught a little bit off guard in terms of this timeline. We were not anticipating 212 questions. So let's just think about this for a minute, okay? We've got 212 questions. We've got about 10 project team members. Each of those entities has a legal department. Each of those entities has a chain of command that those responses need to be run through. The entire project team has to vet each of those answers. We have 43, or what, how many pages is the response for? 35 pages for the responses for the questions that were clear, concise, and that we could respond easily to those questions. Can you please explain to me how in 1.5 hours we're going to deliver 35 pages of response to about 80 questions? It just is not feasible logistically. So what we have proposed here is that we worked very hard. Most of us worked nights, weekends, evenings. Dale reorganized his entire schedule, as did most of us. So the point I'm trying to make here, I'm not complaining. The point I'm trying to make here is that the time frame to adequately provide you with an open, transparent, and fulsome response to those questions is very tight. And so we did the best we could. We have those provided in writing. We're seeking for you to help us clarify the remainder of these questions so we can provide you a fulsome, honest answer to these questions. So that, I think, is very important to understand, that we're doing what we can to address your concerns.
Okay, we'll take 2 more on process, and then if we don't get moving, you're going to walk out of here and they won't have the help they need, and then you're not going to get those answers. Yes, you?
I'm very grateful for the time you're spending on this. I think the sense in the room is that you're acting as though there's a hard and fast time to start construction on the project, regardless of whether the public has had any chance to respond to information and answers that you developed.
I saw one hand over here. Yes?
I think your option is to delay it a year, like Charlie suggested, and then you don't have to respond in a week and a half and send everything up the chain of command. I'm completely sympathetic, Andrew. I spent 33 years at EPA. I understand what you're saying, but then if you need that time, you've got to delay getting started. Right. Put it back a year, and that's your answer.
Just as a question, just to help me understand something. How many people in this room have seen the presentation or seen the whole project laid out, or have done the virtual reality tour of the project? It's okay to not raise your. Okay, good.
There's no whole project. That's fine.
Well, it's the project the way that it exists. Okay, good. Well, that's good. It's good that at least you're aware of those things. So. I don't know what to tell you. We have you here right now. We've only gone through, I think, maybe 3 or 4 questions of 21. Yes.
I just want to say the frustration that I'm hearing in this room is I opened up the information I had discussed this evening. It said public forums aimed to answer questions on FishPass project. That was the heading, and it said all questions collected will be answered by FishPass staff or advisory board members on behalf of the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission. So we all came here expecting.
Ah, I see.
That's what was out there.
So it failed to say not tonight, right? All right. So those of you who have hung in despite frustration and feeling like perhaps you were misled as to what would happen tonight, for those of you that are still here, I'd really like your help for the team so that we can finish these questions so that they can do a good job answering them for you. And if I can get you to do that, that'd be helpful. Yes?
If everyone stays and helps you answer all these questions, the questions seem like an exercise in futility. If there's a predetermined outcome and you're just going through the motions.
Oh, I think you're already shaping things. I think that already there's consideration, added consideration for the parking that'll be required. I think there's already added consideration for the kayak exit points.
That's not the point I'm making. I think probably a lot of the people in the room here don't want this project at all, and that's why they're here. Your very first question was about how much exposure had been given in the paper or public notice for it, and very little had been. I would bet that 99% of people in this city and county know very little to nothing about this actually being foisted upon.
What I can say is it's obvious that this group hasn't. I've seen the documentation for how many meetings they've held, so I can't, that's not a debate right now, but this group obviously doesn't feel like it's been heard. Okay, and we're trying to help you be heard by sharpening these questions so that the group can respond back in writing, and you'll have that. And then I'll...
And just being heard,
Well, when I say being heard, I meant heard, considered, acted upon.
do what you want to do regardless of what we want.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, would you like to move on? Thank you. Any objection to moving on? I actually have nowhere to be until 6:15 in the morning when I fly back to Ann Arbor, so I'm happy to stay all night with you if you'd like. You first, and then I'll take you, and then we're going to move on.
There's a word missing.
I think we're willing to help you refine these questions, but to Andrew's comment, I don't care how many presentations you've given. All the ones I've seen have basically been presentations about what a great thing FishPass is going to be. There's not been any opportunity for a give and take to question the things that have been said. And so you could have given 300. The fact that you've got 200 questions in the short time that Gene went out and tried to get them says you haven't answered questions. And I think the frustration here is we're going to see the answers and they're not going to satisfy the questions that a lot of us have. So you got an issue here, guys. I don't know how you deal with it, but we'll help you try to get through these so you can get answers.
I suspect that
It would have helped, Dale, if we had had the answers.
I think that the 77 that were finished were probably done somewhere around noon because I didn't see I actually was at the airport by the time. So I'm not kidding. They're doing this in real time.
Put it on.
Well, I don't have that power, but I do have the power to recognize just a couple more folks and then let's work. Yes.
Thank you. I feel like we all deserve a commitment that there will be an opportunity for public hearing.
I think there are folks in this room that are hearing you. I don't have that power.
Well, if they're here.
I think they all have to consult with each other. And I don't think that they're going to do that in front of you.
Before we leave tonight, what do we know the next, Gene?
I think that you'll know the plan for at least a broad plan for the next meeting. I think you will. I think I saw that in the agenda, yes? If we get to the agenda.
To sum up, and with respect for everybody's time and the process it takes to answer these, can we get a commitment that there will be another hearing, or at least a hearing to go over the answers to these questions before the bid date?
Another forum or a hearing? Hearing is a very different thing than a forum.
We understand procedure and due process, and this isn't a public agency holding a public hearing, a public notice. But I think Corey's absolutely right. I'm a minority in this room probably. I want the FishPass to work, I want it to be functional, and I want it to be there. But I think that you have a timeline related to the bids and the delay of the answering, or at least the ability for the public to get the pound of flesh in front of this public forum of decision makers to project their concerns in a public forum, maybe ask that person rather than sending them a specific email. A commitment to, there will be some form of a public forum which those questions, once given to us, can be given back a response before the bids go out. I don't care about delaying it, but give us an opportunity that's at least somewhat reasonable to say, we've read these responses you've printed. I have 4 of them I have issues with. I want to ask the panel of decision makers and stakeholders up there those particular questions.
Okay,
I think the commitment is difficult to get.
I can tell you that the folks that can make the decision to provide some kind of opportunity are listening to you right now. They're not going to respond right now. I think they're hearing what you're saying. I think that was well and articulately put. Okay? All right. And you. I love the peace sign.
You may I was actually wanting to get back to your little questionnaire, your proposed question. I mean, you added the one line there. You said that yourself. Of course, Lake Michigan water levels cannot be mitigated. That is kind of part of an answer. So if it's a question, please take that out because that doesn't apply.
Okay, that was just an odd thought of mine, so take that out. I just put it in there as a note to myself. So it's being removed in front of you. Is that good? All right. All right, so let's move on. Let's reveal the next thing that needed clarification. The original concern was presented as the deteriorating condition of the Union Street Dam warranted repair or replacing the dam to prevent problems in the future. Somehow the proposal for replacing the dam has evolved into an expensive dam with an arc labyrinth weir, an expanded park, river access, removing 63 established trees, a research building, and an experimental and controversial FishPass. I think the word project should have been in there. What prevents this project from being downsized to just replacing the dam with a better design and some park improvement without all the risky experimental additions? And then reveal the block below it too, because this was a combined block. This one was a little shorter. What prevents this project from being downsized to just replacing the dam with a better design and some park improvements without some risky experimental conditions? Do we have FishPass? I think those two are like the same question. So let's see what I did when I played with it. Is the experimental component of FishPass project necessary? Otherwise, you're just replacing it if the dam's deteriorating or replacing a deteriorating dam. I can tell you, as Sea Lamprey Control Program Director for the Commission, that's a blocking structure, and we definitely need a blocking structure in the Boardman. So, and there is Article 10 of the treaty between the U.S. and Canada that addresses that issue. But I'll step back out of that role.
I didn't understand what you just said. What is the blocking structure, the FishPass or the dam?
Sea lamprey need to be blocked from the Boardman watershed. And so the FishPass project is a way to allow fish passage for desirable species and yet prevent species like lamprey or maybe goby, or in the future if they ever invade Asian carp, from getting into the system. Actually, I'll just step out 1 second. From the perspective of many fisheries people around the world, if this riddle can be solved here in Traverse City, this is going to be amazingly beneficial for the entire environmental community worldwide.
But the question is, why not just fix or replace the dam? Do we have, I mean, it just said, you're
Okay, so add another question. Why not just fix or replace the existing dam? Good? Now I think I've got you. In my mind, I just, yep. Okay. Yep.
What about the 63 trees? Why do those need to be taken out?
All that concrete put in.
Yeah.
All right, so we didn't address the trees in there, so that's a fair question. Why do the 63 established?
I already provided answers.
Do what?
The tree question has been asked numerous times throughout, and it's in one of the provided answers.
Oh, it's in a provided answer that you'll find on the website? Okay. Are you good with that? If you don't find it, write me an email, okay? I'm easy to find. Yes?
And my question is not included in everything that they listed, but why do we need an amphitheater there?
Okay, we're going to get to that one. It's coming. Trust me, it's coming. All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the real first question, I may have been one of the people that raised that, is that there have been no less than 5 professional engineering inspections on the dam. And I'm sorry, folks, it's not failing, it's not obsolete. What's failing is the pipes through the dam, and the engineers recommended relining them, and the city budgeted to do that years ago and hadn't done it. So
why haven't the pipes through the dam been relined?
the dam is about to fail or it's the end of its useful life, if you're not a professional engineer, don't stand up and make those friggin' comments. Because you've got professional engineering reports that say the dam is unsatisfactory.
So I heard a sharp question. Why haven't those failing pipes been relined?
Precisely.
That's fair to type in there.
And we've got it.
What's the cost differential between just replacing the pipes and this massive $22 million?
It was $400,000 to
Okay,
reline
so
the pipes.
why are we going to spend $22 million?
What I'd like to do right now is finish this. That can be brought up later. We got the question in here, and that will trigger other questions, right? That's the purpose of doing this way. Okay, next. And thank you for helping clarify, because that one was hard for me. I tried.
You're a biologist.
Yes, I am. Thank you. All right. Why are the adjacent parks, Lay, Hannah, and VFW, not being considered for use as a meeting place versus another concrete building infrastructure? I think that's that amphitheater that we told you we'd get to. Considering the availability of other parks in the vicinity, why is an amphitheater being included in the project? That's the sharp question. Fair? Okay. You see why we're doing this? I hope. All right, reveal the next question. And it may be a coupled question. It looks like it is. If it's maybe not. If the FishPass collective team wants to experiment and implement several ideas regarding fish through 2025 at least, why is the FishPass design not impermanent instead of $20 million hunks of concrete?
Loaded question.
It is a loaded question. That is a very loaded question. So rationally, I said, what rational and design constraints resulted in a permanent structure? What rationale, not rational? What rationale and design constraints? Yes.
Maybe a related question that was part of one that's already been answered, and that's what happens to FishPass at the end of the experiment? Does it stay there?
What happens to FishPass at the end of the experimental period?
That's already been answered in the other question.
It's already answered in the other questions. I'm seeing a head nodding up here, yes.
It either is or you'll see it in this list.
Okay. All right. Trust us. Yes.
Wouldn't it be part of the same question as you asked, and maybe they're looking at, it's an experimental, a series of experiments, right? I mean, we're talking bubblers, we're talking about electric things, we're talking about somebody with a baseball bat knocking the Asian cart back or something, I don't know. So if it's a concrete permanent structure, doesn't that kind of prohibit changing from one experiment to another? In other words, are you going to build in multiple things into this concrete structure? Are there the electric wiring, the bubblers, the guy with the baseball bat? I mean, are they all going to be part of it, built into it all at once? And then say, well, yeah, I'm just saying. So maybe the idea of a permanent structure is probably a very good answer or question. Why are we doing a permanent structure when we're going to be playing with experimental things that may change?
So in the other questions that were asked and answered, is that addressed, the variability of this design and its experimental adaptability? I mean, I've seen it and I understand it, but I'm asking these guys if it's in the responses.
That question is not specifically asked, but it is addressed in the response.
Okay, so then let's just record it here. Is experimental manipulatory capacity being designed into FishPass to account for a wide range of experimental options? How did I do? We'll see if he captures it. Are you kidding me? I'm an extrovert. Once I say it, it's gone. Let me look. Is the experimental manipulatory capacity being designed into FishPass capable of accommodating a wide range of experimental options? These guys are recording, so they probably got what I really said the first time.
It's no lie in accommodate.
A wide range of experimental options. Here's the rule. If you want to be a spell checker, you get to be a typer. Okay? I'm crippled by spell check. I used to know how to spell, but Microsoft has ruined me, okay?
Is that even a word?
Manipulatory capacity. I don't know, whatever you want to say. It's a word right now. We'll find a better word later, okay? All right, let's reveal the next question. I'm not a fisherman, but I've been listening to the concerns of the Brook Trout Coalition, who have been working to protect the river's brook trout, our state fish. They feel strongly that allowing steelhead and salmon upriver will endanger the survival of the naturally occurring brook trout. Can you assure us that passage of these more aggressive fish upstream will not be allowed? Okay? Let's see how that got dealt with. How will the question of upstream passage of steelhead and salmon, either during the project or in post-project operations, be determined? The regulatory authority for that, I believe, is the state of Michigan.
That's questionable.
There's a more specific question at the bottom that says, can you assure us that the passage of these fish will not be allowed?
That question would have to be asked to the DNR.
They're your partner.
Yeah, okay, but,
No.
okay, so the way that this question is worded will cause the DNR to be addressing that issue. It's going to be addressed.
After the contracts are let out.
Do what?
After the contracts are let.
I can't, yes.
Will trout die? I know I'm not a moderator or a facilitator,
You do have a good voice, though.
but I have a real simple clarification. Will trout die?
All fish will die eventually. From what? Actually, what a fisheries biologist will tell you is that the average fish is a dead fish.
Sir, I think even if the answer is no to that last piece, just no, I think it's important for the community to see that question verbatim in the list.
Okay, so, but I would take the word "you" out. Can the appropriate regulatory authority, right, because that's the real question, actually just say assure that passage of, I wouldn't say these more aggressive, I'd say steelhead and salmon. That's the question. Aggressive is, if I'm a predator, I'm aggressive. If I'm a trout, I'm aggressive. I eat other fish.
Yeah, but you can either be a Michigan trout, or you can be a Maine trout, or you can be a California trout. Like
Steelhead salmon.
No, not rainbow trout. Steelhead. Have a little kindness for our typist. He's trying to listen to me, draw points out, and listen to what you say and get things up here. Okay, can the appropriate regulatory authority assure, just take out us, assure that passage of steelhead and salmon will not be allowed? Because who's us? Right?
I would almost add to that, if the DNR, which is the appropriate regulatory authority, wants or makes a decision to pass steelhead and or salmon, can they be overruled?
Interesting question. No, not here.
The NRC can't tell them, no, you're not going to do this.
They have their own regulatory superstructure that they exist in. There are ways to impact all structures.
I think it's important to note that that answer, for at least the first 10 years, is given tonight in the letter from the DNR. So I think we know the answer that within the first 10 years since construction, the DNR is committed, and I'm pleased to see that letter because it's something we've been talking about that was actually put in writing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the question is, I think some people want to know, in the future, beyond that 10 years, what does that look like? I'm just thinking that's what people are really.
Yeah, I understand. They provided the letter. There is an assurance for the 10 years, during the first phase of the project. Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to draw everyone's attention. The letter that Mark is referring to is available in the back. That very succinctly clarifies the process and gives an indication of where the DNR is thinking about heading with respect to the post 10 years. So thanks, Mark, for bringing that up.
Good.
Can be changed though.
Anything in government can be changed. Yes?
I have a question about the wording at the bottom half of that question. Rather than say, can the appropriate regulatory authority, I mean, we know it's the DNR, there's no question.
So you want that to just be stated then?
Well, beyond that, rather than can they, the question involves, will they, number one. Number two, will they commit one way or the other why the public still has a chance for outcry.
Okay, remember, you're asking these questions of the design team, and so you've just thrown them back into an impossibility. They do not have the capacity or the authority to answer for the DNR. So the answer that you'll get back is, we don't know.
When will we have that meeting?
Find out from the DNR.
When will we have that meeting?
It's their responsibility to take it to the DNR and get an answer to these questions. It's not.
Andrew?
Yeah, I'm just going to read this DNR statement because this is the answer to that question. Are you okay with that? This is the answer to the question you're asking.
It's available in writing in the back if you don't want to hear it, or Andrew can read it so you all hear it at the same time.
That's the answer to the question.
Okay. If you want to see it, it's available in the back, right?
Yes.
Yep, good. That's good enough. All right, let's move on. I don't even have any clue of how we're doing because I can't see the numbers on the side.
I cut them out. So
Okay.
you can actually read the text.
Okay, good. Invasive problems such as lamprey and Asian carp will affect more than Traverse City. It could become a multiple county problem. Why should a decision of the city be acceptable when it will put 287 square miles of watershed at risk just for a playground? No judgmental words there. And in the next box, reveal what's in the next box under it too, because those are lumped. Why should a decision of the city be acceptable when we'll put 287 miles of watershed at risk just for a playground? Okay, now at the bottom box, open that one because those are lumped, at least in my mind. Does Traverse City have the authority to make aquatic resource management decisions? Who does and how will they be made? It comes to my mind that EGLE has that authority, that DNR has that authority. The city doesn't have that authority.
Well, they do through the issuance of licenses for some of the recreational uses, but.
Oh, we were thinking of the aquatic resource side of it, because as soon as you say putting 287 miles of watershed at risk, that leads most of us to think that you're talking about aquatic organisms and things like that.
I think some people are concerned with the potential for commercial livery operations to be implemented and create what we may call the aluminum hatch.
Okay, so let's put in another question. Will the project result in commercial operations such as liveries, and how will that affect the habitat, I guess? Is that what you're...
We've already got liveries.
Okay. I'm just trying to help you clarify. So apparently you already have liveries, so they're there.
Well, they can expand, the city's done a pretty good job limiting that, but it can be expanded. And so I think a lot of people want to know what's the city's down, who has the regulatory authority to limit that if a public entity is going to operate under that.
So the city has that authority, right?
In some locations, yes. In some, the county does it.
City, county, okay. Oh yeah, up in the watershed it would be the county maybe, townships, I don't know.
From what the gentleman that spoke at the beginning said, once the structure is built, Traverse City has no responsibility for the decisions that are made regarding, they said it was strictly the DNR. Can you do that? Can you own something and say, I don't have any liability or responsibility? It doesn't sound like something the lawyers would be very fond of.
Since I wasn't here for that part and didn't hear it, I know that there are 20 plus legal questions that are hanging out there that need to be dealt with in other forums. Who spoke actually? Who was the speaker? Gene? Okay. We've recorded that question here, and do we need to add another question?
Really, no. You're changing it by adding that bottom paragraph there. I wrote the original question one at the top there. But my concern was about you're putting in this experimental passage thing, and if it fails and things like lampreys and things like that go up it will contaminate potentially the whole 287 square miles of watershed. And yes, commercial fishing and things like that, or deliveries is another problem, but that's a separate question. And again, the only thing that the city is perhaps getting out of this is a playground, okay? Place to have recreation, to have an amphitheater, to have fishing and commercial things and stuff like that. And, you know, so that we don't have to put out any money. But the rest of it is everybody else. It's not just this county. Has, you know, they're not here, they're not having much say in it and stuff like that. But they will be put at risk because of this. The failure of this affects everybody else. Not what you might do upstream, but what you do with this FishPass can affect everybody else in the watershed. So the commercial fishing should be a separate question.
So the first thing that I need to do is ask, in the body of questions that were asked and answered, did that come up, and was there an answer provided? I don't know. I don't have those in front of me.
Isn't the question whether other jurisdictions have expressed their opinions about the management of the resource in their own jurisdictions as a result of this? Have you consulted with the upriver jurisdictions?
Yeah. Do they even know this is happening?
So I would ask that be added, have upriver,
Okay, good.
jurisdictions given their approval.
Thanks, perfect. Well, actually, just, if you can space it out so those look like separate questions like they are, then let's add that next one. Have upriver jurisdictions been consulted?
And given their approval.
Fair to add.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have generated a couple of additional questions. Not a problem with that. That's why we're doing this. Whether or not the team feels like they're sharply worded enough to be able to address them, I don't know. They may have to defer to the appropriate regulatory authorities, which in most cases would be EGLE and the DNR. If it affects sea lamprey control, it is us. Okay, the next question. If FishPass is held up through a referendum or lawsuit, how will that affect requirements related to funding sources? Are there conditions? Okay. If a referendum, or lawsuit is deployed as a mechanism to prevent project progress, will funding sources be jeopardized? That was the only way I could sharpen that. Makes it pretty clear. Does that make it clear?
Yes.
Who can answer that? Which,
I mean, is it the city, is it the DNR? Who would answer that question?
In some instances, it would be the GLFC. In some, it would be other partners in this. It would be the DNR. It would be the city. Who are the other major partners? US EPA.
Region 5.
Region 5 EPA.
I think are there conditions on the funding?
There are multiple sources of funding, so the answer basically is yes, there are multiple and varied conditions.
Maybe what are the conditions on the funding?
Okay, so another question.
Part of the thing.
What are the restrictions on use of, well, actually, what you're asking for is, are there time limits?
What are the conditions on the funding?
Yeah. What conditions pertain to the various funding sources? Because they're numerous.
Is construction timeline tied to funding?
Okay, so that's another question. Is construction timeline tied to funding? You would think absolutely. Don't know.
The beginning of the construction.
I think that probably is broad enough that it captures it. Good? Okay, let's move to the next. Nothing's been decided. Where did they get the money to get this wonderful picture? Are you guys talking about that big diorama? Okay, the big diorama. What are the sources of project funding that have supported design and communication and I think activities? Yeah. And I think they can, and they do have that information, and they can provide it in their answers. Okay, next question. I want to thank you guys that are just leaving now for hanging in as long as you have. Good. Can we learn from the builder operators the specific design of studies they intend to do to evaluate the comparative advantages of decisions that might be made regarding fish passage? Is there a plan to do credible third-party studies of the economical, ecological, and social impact to pass fish? And reveal the one below it too, because it's related. It's amazing how I can remember this, because I just did some of this morning. Include soul of the river in the above question, and so now do this block right down here. How will fish passage research proposals be evaluated to consider possible economic, ecological, social, and soul of the river impacts as they're being considered for funding? And I think that comes right back to your concern with respect to potential impacts and how they would be vetted. For instance, as you're bringing in, as you're working with different species to test that against that facility for passage, you know, where's the mechanism to say, is it safe to do this? Or have we made the proper precautions for escapement?
But this is really going to the scientific methodology.
Yep.
What is the scientific methodology, like peer-reviewed science, that is going to be used for the screening method? I think that's...
Okay, so instead of evaluated...
You're going to the questions being asked. I'm going to the methodology.
No, I understand, but I'm trying to get you and me together here so that you can talk to a biologist. All right? How will fish passage research proposals be subjected to peer review eliminate evaluated?
Just, I need question mark. I don't need any of the other stuff.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get to everybody else too. Is that okay with you? All right. Trying to be inclusive, trying to wrap people in. All right.
Another question.
Well, I think Andrew is probably itching to tell you all about the peer review process that the commission always uses, but that'll be part of the response that comes back. So, yes.
Before it's
sorry, Dan. That second question was the question I asked in one of the question sessions. And I'm okay with you rephrasing the question, but I want to just say what I really meant was it's not a question for engineers and design people. It's a question for kind of the holistic thing of the river, you know, to be considered. Again,
I understood it as soon as I saw it, and that's why I included it in there. Because I remember I facilitated a meeting maybe a year ago, and there was a very eloquent speech about the fact that water connects all things. When you touch water, you touch everything and everyone. And that spoke to me, and the soul of the river comment spoke to me, and I'm sure that the people that live along the Boardman understand the soul of that river. So we're going to have to figure it out, right? In my mind.
One qualification, when I said will trout die, I want that qualified as how will this fish pass affect the ecosystem upriver?
Ah, okay. So can we scroll back up to, do you remember what question that was associated with? but can you help me?
You're the guy who flew in from Ann Arbor.
Yes, I did. And we've been working through this a little bit at a time. So let's see if we can find it for you. Go up a little bit. I saw brook trout up there. Does it fit? Does it fit somewhere in this one where we said, how will the question of upstream passage of steelhead and salmon, either during the project or in post-project operations, be determined, and will Michigan DNR assure that passage of steelhead and salmon won't be allowed? That doesn't directly say anything about trout. So how would you?
It's a two-part question. One, will trout die? You said, fish die. And I'm qualifying that by saying, will upriver. I used to work at a scout camp on the upper Manistee, northern branch of Manistee. And, I'm just wondering if, upriver, things will be, affecting the ecosystem.
So another question, the bottom question, let me see if I can help you. Will the project detrimentally affect the ecosystem with respect to the needs of, and which trout is it? Brook trout? Just pardon me, there are lots of trout in different places. Will the project detrimentally affect the ecosystem with respect to the needs of brook trout?
Effect, not effect.
Yeah, oh, okay. Effect, yes, not effect. That was a good edit. I wasn't looking at the screen. But don't pick on this guy. He's doing a lot of work up here. All right. He's doing it in front of everybody in real time.
He's doing really well, too.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, let's scroll down. Let's see what we've got here. What are the provisions, rules, or regulations for private sector activities within the vicinity of FishPass within the context of public land use around FishPass? And I think the next one below it's also related to it.
I think we did that already.
I think we did, but let's do it. Who will be responsible for enforcement of river use rules, especially during peak months? Are there plans to hire enforcement personnel? See if they each have their own, or if, I'm just not remembering at this point. How will the FishPass project accommodate public use of the river, and how will public use within the project area be regulated?
And financed.
And financed. Money just comes from somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, just have it.
You know, in our pockets.
Thank you. That was good. Okay, the next one down. Has a formal cost-benefit analysis been done on this project? And I struggled with that one because along what parameters? And so this one needs, brain in a jar failed you guys. I came up with a question mark here myself. Yes.
Yeah, that's mine. And it's whenever you have a major project, you have to do some kind of a cost-benefit analysis. The benefit, obviously, is restoring the dam. That's the city's benefit of it. And maybe some public fund, amusements and whatever. But it seems to me before you do anything, you come up with cost estimates. What's the benefit?
Where I lost it, and I think where our folks lost it, is that this project has the potential to have benefits kind of on a statewide scale, a regional scale, a national scale, and an international scale. And so that's where my head just went. But I'm a biologist. So that's where I needed help. Sharpening the question. What?
Grand Traverse and Caucasian counties. Limit to those areas. Directly impacted, not from a scientific point of view, but I think from a financial point of view, from a holistic point of view of the river systemically. The benefits, the biology, the positive, negative impacts. I think we're talking here, I don't think we really, no offense, but we don't give a shit about what the scientists in Virginia are interested in about this project, because it's really not my bailiwick. I'm sure there's a lot of people excited about it, but I think we need to.
So if it was to say cost to benefit, the word formal is kind of a strange word, has a cost to benefit analysis specifically focused on the impacted project watershed.
Yep.
Because that way we don't have to name all the everywhere. It's the watershed, right?
Right.
Been completed.
And I think it's the whole thing. I mean, there's the financial things and benefits.
Watershed's pretty much inclusive, right?
Yep, I agree.
That gets to the local aspect. Is that helpful?
That's fine. I mean, that's what I want to focus in on the area. I don't want to encompass the rest of the country at this point.
Well, I was ready to cover the world in my head. That's why I put a big question mark there.
It also relates to the gentleman's comment earlier about we could have spent $800,000, wherever it was, to fix the pipes through the dam, and now we're spending $20 million as if this comes from heaven. And then the maintenance of that facility falls on the people who live in the city, not in Virginia.
So another question, if it's not been answered elsewhere, and I'm assuming you mean after the project part of the study's done. So has the maintenance and operation cost of the project into the future, the project facilities, they're answered or they'll get to it later? Okay. Will you trust us that they're answered or they're going to get to it later? Okay.
It's either in this list or in the...
Okay. I can tell how tired you guys are. Just hang in there. Okay. Next question. Why hasn't the lower Boardman Ottaway, what's Ottaway?
It's the native plain.
Okay, good. Yeah, and there was something about the Boardman guy being a lumber. Okay, now I'm remembering. Considered as a whole from Boardman Lake to the bay. Well, let's see what happened with that. That might be another question. Yeah. Yep, that one. I need a lot of help with that. And I think our engineers and biologists and everybody else were going, help. Who is the person who put this?
My question.
Oh, good.
Number one, I think it should be called the Ottaway, and we've been talking about that for years because that was the original name. But it's not just a little piece of it that we're talking about here. We want the whole thing addressed. It should be considered as a whole.
So has this proposal been integrated into the entire plan? Is that really for the lower Boardman? Is that what?
The name, but the water, the
No, I wasn't focused on the name, but.
That's a fair question.
Oh. Oh, no. Okay. So I think what I heard, if I'm understanding correctly, has the FishPass design taken into account the entire plan for the lower Boardman, and is it integrated? Does that help?
Yes.
Well, I know it helps me, but if it helps you, that's what's going to make me happy.
Well, it should have been from day one, and now, but it wasn't. We couldn't even.
Let's not do the judgmental stuff right now. Let's just make sure that this group of folks has the right question to address, okay?
At the end of, before the question mark, and the plan, the unified plan for the lower Boardman.
Oh, and the unified plan.
There's the plan that's being developed right now.
Oh, so it.
That's probably a separate
by
question.
By the DDA group.
Okay, so actually it would be what efforts are being made to integrate the FishPass project planning into
the
unified plan. Because the unified plan is currently being developed, is that correct?
Correct.
So there's nothing to integrate just yet, but what efforts are being made to at least link the two so that the impacts between them can be evaluated, right? Is that what you're,
It wasn't my question.
I'm trying to, is that helpful?
Yeah, that helps.
Trying to be helpful. I wish I could fly. I'd have been here quicker. Yes.
I would just add to that, that when the Lower Boardman group, the team, started to meet, which is a subgroup of the DDA, there was no discussion at all of FishPass. It was not even up for discussion.
Wasn't brought up to be considered in that group?
No.
We couldn't discuss it.
Nope. No connection.
Okay. I don't know what to say.
I don't know what to say, because I've remarked about it. I attended those meetings, and I was told it was off the table. You couldn't talk about it.
Okay. So I think that we've got some well-worded questions here that can help with their responses, at least cause some more thinking about these things, correct? Good. We got to be getting near the bottom. If the Fish Passage project does not protect and deliver as projected, what is the city's recourse? So I had to think about this one quite a bit to decide what protect and deliver as projected. If the collective project fails to manage flood stage flows or prevent invasive species from passing upstream, what remedies are available to the city? I didn't know what else to do with that one, so I'm going to need some help.
Didn't write it, can we add undesirable species after invasive species?
Yep. Or undesirable. Well, undesirable, non-desirable. I would say undesirable too, but non-desirable is fine. Next? Okay. Thank you. Most people in government and the various fishing groups act as if this is a given, a done deal. Who has the ultimate authority to give the project a green light and bring in the bulldozers and chainsaws? These aren't loaded at all, right?
We're frustrated.
Okay, so when I read that, what agency is vested with final approval authority for the project, right?
Well, it should make that what authority has final approval to bring in the bulldozers and chainsaws.
I just couldn't make myself do that. If you really want to see bulldozers and chainsaws in there, I imagine there'd be lots of stuff, concrete trucks and.
That's my question, and I would like to see bulldozers and chainsaws.
All right. Final approval authority for the project, which would allow bringing in of the bulldozers and chainsaws. I don't see that as being a problem. I'm cringing just thinking about it, but that's okay.
So do we. And we live there. We cringe thinking about it, we live there, right next to where you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
63 trees, mature trees.
And when you tell us that there shouldn't be more concrete to protect the river, but yet we're going to put in concrete to take out trees.
I'll tell you, some of those mature trees have allies in a defense mechanism. Just a little aside, this weekend, we had an old irrigation line on our farm that then some scrub plants grew up around, and there were poison ivy vines this big, and I was chainsawing those. So if you see me like wincing here and there, I've got some toxins that I'm dealing with in large quantity.
I guess I'm not happy with what agency, because I would think it's the people of the city of Traverse City who has the final approval.
No, that actually is not correct. So I think the question is best left open, and they'll answer it and they'll let you know.
Thank you, sir.
So, well, we had the one more. You were charged to be the guard dog.
Charlie's question.
Your question, because I've lost it.
Question about delaying it's sort of related to the last one, in a way. It's also related to the funding restrictions. But what is the possibility of, is there a possibility, and what is the possibility of delaying construction of this project for at least another year?
Okay. And he's getting that up there, and there'll be an answer.
If I were a citizen and I wanted to delay or stop the project totally, who would I sue? It says one agency. A city, a state?
I don't think the design team would feel comfortable answering that, but I'll bet that an attorney might tell you anybody and everybody you can if you have deep pockets. I've just been through this before in the past, yes?
Thank you for being here and doing this. My question, and you don't have to answer it, but it's not in the facilitator realm. It's more, where are fisheries biologists on this project? Are they excited about it? Do they think it's a good idea? Like, what is your community, how do they feel about this project?
I think they're ecstatic about it on a large scale. I think that from an engineering perspective, it offers some huge challenges that if they can be surmounted and produce selective passage, be a truly wonderful thing for the entire aquatic ecosystem management community on a state scale, even on this watershed scale. If we can answer the fundamental question of how do we pass species that are desirable and block those that aren't, it's hugely beneficial to sea lamprey control. Right now, we oppose removal of any terminal blocking dam because we have to. Because if lamprey invade a system like the Grand River or the Boardman, for one thing, it means that those watersheds will be treated with TFM, probably every 3 to 5 years. And that's by convention and treaty between two nations. It's not about local jurisdictional authority. It's something that we like to try to avoid, okay? So from the sea lamprey control program perspective, you know, speaking selfishly, selective fish passage is the holy grail. From an inland fishery biologist perspective that wants to reconnect the lakes to the river systems for species like white sucker and other species like sturgeon that migrate, same story. And this project in this place is the only place in the world that this is being proposed with this much collaboration between internationally renowned scientists in the field of fish passage. So you asked for an honest response.
How do we get so lucky to have it here?
There were, well, I'll tell you what, there were as many as I think 15 or more, I don't know, Andrew's got the answer, areas that were thought about, where we looked at, you know, would there be local public support? Is this a system where there is a threat, where it is real, where the work that's being done would be meaningful? Would it be welcome for whatever reason in the local community? All of those things were considered in a monster matrix, okay? And the Boardman came out on top, bar none. We looked at 8 states and the province of Ontario for this type of a project.
Is anything politically driven with that decision?
Not at all. That's what I mean when you get the answers back about the scientific rigor thing that, oh, you'll hate that.
Find the question there, if I might, a little bit.
Okay.
The question was the delaying the construction, the initial construction work on the project. The project has been going on, and it's still going. This is part of the project, so I don't want to delay the project. I want to delay the possibility of delaying the construction when we start moving earth.
Okay.
Bulldozers and the chainsaws.
He's put that in there. Did he get it for you? Okay, good.
I don't know if there'd be a question to add to this. but it's a question I would like to ask. You mentioned that we have 15 copies of some of the questions and 35 pages, I guess, and things like that. It is probably cost prohibitive. Can we have the questions and the answers published in the Record Eagle paper so that we can all get copies?
I can't speak for the paper, but
I mean, can we have it done? I mean, there's a cost. Yeah, he was one.
I think there would be a cost to the paper too. I can't speak for them.
Cost, but I mean, it would probably be the most effective way, and I would also.
Folks are pointing to an empty chair. Is that empty chair?
He's a reporter from the local paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he wouldn't know of the cost.
Okay, so here's the deal. They're gonna be available on the internet. We've got 15 back there, and if anybody doesn't feel that they can get access through the internet, there's gonna be a sign-up sheet at the back of the room because somebody's gonna make sure that happens, right? And for whoever signs up, we'll make sure you get a copy that you can read through.
But the internet, okay, is limited in the number of people that will actually have access to it.
Yeah, that's why I said.
Will read it, and reading long documents like that online is much more difficult than it is to read it with paper, in a paper copy. That's why you print out paper copies.
It's why I do.
Yeah, let's see if we can get it printed in the paper. Can we please have it printed?
So they've asked.
Access it easily. And
so they've asked about printing the responses in the paper, and I won't put you on that spot to answer right now, but they've asked if you would consider that.
There we go. That's Judy Renzi. That she'd be the one probably to ask.
I don't think that we can have that answer right now because there's other areas that we're looking at.
DDA could publish it, correct?
What I'm saying is that there's other areas that we can look at to make sure that all of the questions are available, and we'll look at all different mechanisms to ensure that those answers are available.
The final presentation could be in the paper.
We'll consider that. I will say that we will look at all avenues to be able to.
So wait a minute, gang. For the people who are starting to leave, I want to seriously thank those who are heading for the door for hanging in here with us. And I'll stay as long as anybody wants me to be in here. But for those who are heading for the door, thank you. And then you, and then you.
Follow-up question about selection, because what I have found and read doesn't square with what you just mentioned a couple minutes ago. That when Dr. Youre presented his presentation to the City Commission, there was a score, and I think Traverse City and maybe Thunder Bay had equal score. They were like 48, and Little Manistee River and Sheboygan were a couple points behind.
They had a whole matrix.
None of us, I'm sure you guys had a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
You added up a column. We haven't been able to find any of that information.
Andrew's behind you itching to say something.
Well, let me finish my point.
Okay.
You know, we've been looking for it to try to figure out what happened, because the way this deal came down was at the August 2016 meeting of the IT, there was an agenda item added for Dr. Youre to make a presentation on FishPass. The city manager of Traverse City stuck up his hand and said, let me take it to the city commission to see if I can get a resolution of endorsement. And less than 3 weeks later, right after Labor Day, the day after Labor Day, the city approved a resolution to support the design of FishPass. Not the construction, the design. And that all happened in a 3-week period. So I think a lot of us have questions about how this whole thing came down and who made the decision and how much information people really had when that decision was made. It's something that's been bugging a lot of us.
Maybe Andrew can help. He's itching to raise his hand back there. He's behind you. You can't see him.
Mr. Buckholder wrote us a while ago and asked questions similar to that. So what we did was we documented the entire history of the decision-making process from the idea, the decision matrix that Dale was referring to, and then subsequent site visits and how that moved through the IT, the DNR, the city. It's documented in a 3-page document, so we can make that available to anyone who wants to, and that will be made available through the website as well if it's not already there.
Would that I'd like to see the scoring sheet.
Yeah, what's the document called?
What's it called?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, it's probably something around site selection.
So Andrew, they wanted to know, are you going to include that scoring sheet, the matrix?
I don't think it's in there, but we did talk about the top sites and then the process of visiting those.
I want to see how every city ranked on each of the 17 or whatever criteria, the points, and because as I saw it, the reason we got FishPass is Traverse City volunteered to be the site. That's the bottom line. It was ranked up at the top. And I can understand how somebody from Ann Arbor might not want to go to Thunder Bay to work on FishPass in January. I mean, I wouldn't.
Thunder Bay is not bad.
Yeah. So we have a lot of craft breweries here, Traverse. It's a lot more fun place.
Right.
Well, there's nothing secretive about those data, so I can provide
Okay,
those.
well-
Rick, I don't know if they're in the appendix for that or not. Do you remember?
No, we've looked all over. We've had
Okay, so I heard a commitment to provide it. Your request has been granted. Do you remember the great kazoo from the Flintstones? Just look at Andrew and think of the great kazoo right now. Okay.
You're finished with your 21 questions?
Yes, we are.
Can we get, the rest of us that are here, some kind of understanding and your commitment that we can meet together in this kind of forum or any of kind of terminology you want to use, but to review the answers instead of just looking them up? Because I could look up those answers and I could say, okay, but if somebody's sitting over there, over there, over there, looks here, they might have something to say that would add to my understanding of that, instead of me sitting in isolation. And it opens up the discussion more so and involves the public, because there's a lot of stuff that happens up here that is pre-planned and pre-staged. And lots of times it goes to the public and there's public input, but it still goes right back to the original idea. It's to appease the public. And I just want to make sure that this process doesn't go along those lines, because there are two very distinct camps. There's a, we got to do this because we need the experiment, we can get all this data, and we can fix our dam for free. Or wait a minute, you're going to screw up the whole other end of the boardman by doing this if a couple of fish get through. The Record Eagle just put out a little story about some salmon and steelhead getting under the wire and everything already going upstream. You know, I sit on my boat on the Boardman, and when the river was low, I could watch the salmon come up and spawn right in the lower parts before they get to the Weir.
Sure.
So if we have a dam that's functioning, and we have a weir that functions, and we can fix our dam for $400,000 to $800,000, why do we need to spend $20 million for something that may or may not work? And no one can tell me, no one will tell me that it's going to work, and no one will tell me what happens if it doesn't work. So I don't want this thing to be built and fail, because it makes everybody.
Trust me, I don't want it to
But
fail.
I want to know what's going to happen if it does fail. I'm a taxpayer in town. Am I going to get stuck with employees working that thing for the next 20 or 30 years? Who's going to pay for the constant maintenance that's going to be needed? There's a lot of taxable questions that aren't answered. We're already told that we have to hire 2 new city employees if this project goes through. What's the future? What's the maintenance? What's the outreach?
I think that in some of the legal stuff that I saw that you didn't see right here, I think many of those questions were raised in detail. Right now, Andrew's busy talking back there. They were, okay.
If I could just pile on slightly, I'm not an expert on fish or anything like that, but what I found in brochures that were provided to the public was all the reasons this is a great project and not a single downside. That it was all pro and no con. And but as a taxpayer, I'm suspicious. People that are working on this project for 10 years, they want the project to happen. And no one has turned around to the people and said, okay, this is what it's going to cost, these are the risks, and these are the benefits. Now we want you, the public, to decide whether you want to take the risk in order to get the benefits.
That's not happening.
So I know that one of the things that they want to do before they wrap, and if folks that are leaving need to leave, you can, but I think they're going to talk about next steps. Somebody going to do that? You are? Or yes? Yep. And if you know, I would offer to be involved in planning that next meeting if you want me to be helpful in that. And there might be a way to include interactive components that might be more satisfying. It's possible.
I just
I had a question for about 10 minutes. I've been raising my hand.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
This
group has dominated me.
As a neighborhood dweller, you know, we talk about $20 million for the project and everything. Why are we adding such things as the amphitheater? It has nothing to do with figuring out what fish are where. It's more concrete in our neighborhood. It's another place where they got to drill. And is it going to ruin some of the houses, the churches that are in the neighborhood? Why are we expanding it beyond, you know, what it is if we really need to do the FishPass to figure out to take care of the river? I get that. But why do Detroit? Why do you want an amphitheater?
Kayak passage and.
No, and there's
and two landings for the kayaks.
So the amphitheater question is in there. We did get it in there, and the folks just.
But yeah, and it's more than the amphitheater, but expanding the project beyond what scientific benefit you're going to choose.
There you go. And I think that we did include that. Are you ready? All right, so I want to thank you all for hanging in there, for doing something you didn't expect, and for helping clarify the questions, because the team is going to take them very seriously, and you will see written responses for all of them.
Thanks for running. Thank you, Gail.
Will there be a chance? Will there be answers before the public, before it's a done deal? If we get answers in conjunction, or a meeting in conjunction with the bids being let, that's not the time.
So thinking about where we are right now, I think the reason that the team probably said that they would commit to getting back to you by the 30th is just the fact that today's already we're right up at the end of October. I don't know what their constraints were. I didn't talk to them. I know what they've done to
Meeting before.
Right, but you need the answers. You also need the answers too. When bulldozers are, when is the project scheduled to begin? If it's going to
The bid's going out in January. It starts in March.
Starts in March.
When bids go out, you're partially, more than partially.
That's a little pushy for a lot of answers not being out there.
I mean, the fact that you've made your answers is wonderful, but we weren't, if we could have seen the answers before this meeting, there might have been some more informed questions with possibility.
And I feel the same way. I would have liked to have seen them before today too. But they didn't get them done.
And if you can't do it, then why barrel ahead with this time?
Well, you have to understand. You have to understand there's been a massive process that's been going on. This group's not been heard. Okay, so this group generated over 200 questions. What, the 15th, or when was this meeting? The 15th of October. The team did their darndest, and they worked hard. They answered 70% of them.
That's great, but as Tom Mayer said, he attended a meeting and was told, no, we can't talk about it now. We can't talk about it now. We can't talk about it now. Right?
Who told them?
I would say that he was talking about the lower boardman leadership team, and it was always part of the component, but we were doing public outreach at the time. So the lower Boardman River leadership team did public outreach relative to the 1.6 miles of the lower Boardman. We heard that there was questions. Every time we went out, there was questions. So we didn't say nothing can be talked about. We're saying we want to hear the questions.
And we're just saying,
here we are.
Once you've given us your answers, give us a chance.
What I'm committed to say is that we heard you. The partners are here, and we thank you for coming tonight. And we heard what you were saying. We are going to reevaluate how we're going to get the answers back out to you, and if we can come back within a group forum before the end of the year. That is our commitment to you, is that we will be able to get an answer back on how we're going to be able to release these. We already, by November 30th, the answers will be had. So we'll have them on the website and they'll be available. We will consider, I have to get to the project partners to identify when will that happen, if we can have another forum like this to be able to have a back and forth response.
Gee, would that happen hopefully prior to bids being let out?
We're trying to do it by the end of the year.
And if that's not possible, can you delay those bids, the bidding process, by 3 or 4 months at least?
And at this point, I can't answer that question. I can't.
Well, I realize it's not up to the TDA, but for the rest of these guys that are here, it's up to that whole group, isn't it? Whether they can postpone it for 6 months or a year.
So what we're going to do is we're going to reconvene. The group's going to reconvene the partners, and we'll get answers back out to you on the process that will go forward. But there's been a tremendous amount of outreach that has happened. And I know this feels like there hasn't been a lot, but this is a 15-year process from the beginning of the removal of the dam. We're at the last part of the process. There's been a tremendous amount of public outreach, and everybody deserves to be heard, and I get that. But we need to be cognizant of the timing of everything as well. But we heard you, and we're going to reconvene and figure out how that process is going to go. Is that fair to everybody? I know it's not what you want to hear, but that's the best I can do at this time.
Gene, it shouldn't be on you.
I am relaying that the information that it's not just the city commission, it's all of the partners together that we're trying to get this cohesive group to be able to answer the questions for this community. I'm sorry?
18 months after the fact, I appreciate what the lower boardman group is doing. You know, every time this is presented to the city commission and the planning commission, not one commissioner asked a single question. And look at how the community is subjected to that process. And again, thank you for what you're doing and continue to do, but this should fall on the city commission and the planning commission for not asking any questions to the entire process.
And the city representatives are here. Marty Colburn has been here, and they are partners in this whole process. So is there any other questions? And we're going to be reaching out to you.
Are our representatives in the city, and there's been no discussion by the board.
City commission.
Yeah.
She means the city.
Oh, city commission.
Gene, you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that 77% of the other
Yes.
are available hard copies.
So we have some hard copies on the back of the table with the answers that we have. They're going to be online as well at the DDA's website.